Hey gang, we're just looking at some configuration right now of the layer 2 VLAN topology that we might want to put in as we're supporting access points, we're supporting management of the switch itself, and we're supporting the various different configurations associated with supporting our SSIDs, right, that are going to be hosted by a particular access point that will then need to be turned into a particular VLAN. So we got to plan all that out ahead of time, be thinking about our connections and how we're going to manage that. So we create VLANs. And when we create a VLAN, the process is pretty straightforward on the switch, right? All we've got to do is config terminal. VLAN is the command in global configuration followed by a number, right? Up to 4094 with our modern iOS. So we've got a lot of different numbers we can choose. How do you know what's the right number? You plan it out. You don't want to have two VLANs with the same number within your infrastructure if possible. So try and come up with a unique numbering system that scales across your enterprise for best practices, really. You want it to be very clear what's going on, especially as switches communicate with other switches. It's possible even to tunnel VLANs to remote networks, so keep them unique. And then give them a good name. Here we're talking about a management VLAN, as in what's the VLAN that we'll use to manage that switch. And we've come up with a clever name, MGT for management. Make sure your names are specified, they're unique, they make sense. You may want to even go as far as management and then identify 192.168.11.0, right? Specify the IP address of the network ID, the subnet mask with CIDR notation. Do what you can to make it as explicit as possible so there's as little guesswork for others. As we come up with the IP scheme that is going to overlay the VLAN scheme, then we can come up with a plan for how to implement IP addressing through DHCP, static addressing where needed, right? We'll have to put that into play. So we will repeat this command multiple times. VLAN 11, name it management. Maybe it's VLAN 12, name it AP for access point. VLAN 13, and associate that with maybe the wireless guest network here. VLAN 14, maybe we associate that with the corporate wireless, right? And when we do that, for wireless networks, especially as VLANs, I often do a little W underscore in the naming convention before then putting in the rest of the command. So it might be, W underscore guest underscore 192.168.14.0/24, right? Whatever is needed there. So again, all of this can help it to be as useful as possible. On that switch, we see another command right here, just as we're wrapping this up, and that is making sure that we have the switched virtual interface and IP address assigned. In other words, we need to be able to connect to the switch, manage it, probably learn to do this early on, but again, because we don't actually configure a specific port with an IP address, instead, any port has the potential of reaching the virtual interface it is virtual, it's in the mind of the switch itself. So interface command, normally we do interface fast Ethernet or gigabit, but in this case it's interface VLAN, and then we want to use whatever number we know is going to be used for management connection. So in this case, the 11 ID number here. And then we'll assign it an IP address just like we would for any other interface, IP address, and then give it the appropriate IP address here. 192.168.11.254 is a free address with a standard Class C subnet mask. So you have to have a good design in place. Your VLAN infrastructure, how are you separating things out? Why are you separating things out? And then for the IP infrastructure that will overlay that. Then you start applying it with these commands to build out these VLAN IDs consistently on all of your switches. And remember, if necessary, you might use a protocol like VLAN trunking protocol to propagate that as necessary to all those switches. And then your switches, of course, will need to have a form of reachability to be able to connect to them and manage them. So that's all we're looking at here is configuring those switched virtual interfaces. Those are also used in layer 3 switches in some circumstances to route between different VLANs as necessary.